So there's some interesting news about the North Koreans, and I'm going to get to that. That's kind of the headline today. It is Friday, February 28th, 2025, and this is a daily brief. Okay, so we're going to start here. 1,060 Russian casualties day over day, 13 tanks, 17 armored fighting vehicles, 54 artillery systems, and 126 vehicles and fuel tanks. Okay, so this number being high correlates generally with this number being low for some reason I don't fully appreciate or understand. But then something is weird because this number being low usually correlates with low numbers around Pokrovsk, but we're going to see that the numbers around Pokrovsk are much higher. It's a strange day. Okay. Andrew Perpetua, I usually show his list of destroyed vehicles and things along those lines, but he is way behind and struggling to keep up. He said last night I finished the 11th, that's February 11th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And this is what he has ahead of him. The 20th, minimal work. 21st, 75 vehicles to check and 394 lines total. 22nd, and you can just see all the work that he has ahead of him trying to tabulate this. So I'm showing you this because I really appreciate what he's trying to accomplish here, and it's a lot of work for him. Okay, fairly large Shahed drone attack. Fairly large is a little bit of an understatement. Out of 208 launched, remember, an average daily what they actually have on hand, unless they've gotten more from another source recently, was about 65. And so in the last couple of days, we saw north of 100, and now we have 208 launched, 107 shot down, 97 were suppressed. Suppressed does not mean that they didn't do damage. Even shot down doesn't mean that they haven't done damage. In Zaporizhia, Russian Shahed drone struck a residential building. Regional administration, according to the regional administration, one woman was injured so far. Again, this was a residential building, just flew into the side through your window. Like, yeah, that's what that's like. Okay, now what are the Ukrainians doing to the Russians? So in Mariupol, Partisans blew up an FSB officer's car. He was seriously wounded. There was a fire and secondary detonations reported at the Vektor plant in Russia's Kursk Oblast. Unofficial reports suggest a Ukrainian drone attack targeted an ammo depot at the facility late on February 27th. And then we see this. Ukrainian forces struck the ammunition depot in occupied Selydov overnight. This was 27th, 28th, and it was thermobaric. Look at this explosion. Right? Overnight, night became day in Russian-occupied Donetsk as a Russian thermobaric ammo storage facility was targeted by a Ukrainian strike. Again, the difference between going after an apartment block and going after a ammunition depot is quite stark, and this happens very regularly. Ukrainian forces recently advanced near Toretsk and Pokrovsk, and Russian forces advanced near Pokrovsk, Kharkiv, and Velka Novosilka. North Korea reportedly recently deployed additional troops to Kursk, and we're going to talk about that. So I've seen different estimates there, but I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. In the Pokrovsk direction, this is the thing that I thought was odd. In the Pokrovsk direction, Russians led 43 assaults, but 43 and this low number of 1060, that's really the odd thing, because usually when you see a low number like 10 or 11, there's maybe 20, maybe 25, maybe 30 some odd assaults. 43 is kind of high given where they are. Okay, well, at any rate, let's talk about North Korea. So North Korea, this is a BBC article yesterday. North Korea has sent more troops to Russia, South Korea's spy agency has said. North Korea sent more soldiers to Russia and redeployed others to the front line in western Kursk region. So they brought them back. They're teaching them lessons. So they've effectively removed 4,000 of the 12,000 or so North Koreans off the battlefield so far, and they've taken them back. They're like retraining them. They didn't know how to deal with drones, for example, and so it looks like it's going to be another big push on Kursk eventually. It said the exact number of extra troops sent was unknown. Military officials quoted in South Korean media have said that they believe it was at least 1,000. I've seen estimates from 1,000 to 3,000 fresh North Korean troops. Okay, now they also had this interesting little bit near the end of the article. Russia's military has not publicly revealed its battlefield casualties since September of 2022, when it said that 5,000 soldiers had been killed. So we could have some fun extrapolating that and seeing what that would be, what that would look like. But Zelensky has put the Ukraine's military casualties at 45,100, but a number of military experts, both in Ukraine and the West, believe the losses are much higher. When that number came out, I said it's probably higher. It's probably, and I explained that it's probably about 2/3 of what Russian losses are. So if you just for some easy rough cut math. Now, 45,000, one of my viewers explained in a post, like, look, these are the numbers that they can actually count, that we have the actual body and the figure, like we know where this guy came from. So there's probably plenty of casualties that they haven't actually been able to account for yet. So that's an official figure. And of course, the number is going to be higher. Okay, North Korean troops claim that they fought for free in Russia. Yeah, this is the way Kim Jong-un rolls. Like, look up Dollar Heroes, the video Dollar Heroes, and you'll see, like, they export labor, and it all comes back to Kim, but they work like dogs. And same thing here with the military. So here's Euromaidan Press. North Korean troops claim that they fought for free in the Russian army. In the Russian army. The Wall Street Journal, which conducted the first Western interviews with North Korean troops, this guy was saying, "I didn't know I was going to Russia," said 21-year-old Paik, who was drafted at 17 into the Special Forces. "I realized it only when I arrived." Well, that's something. "They were falsely informed that they would fight against South Korean troops aiding Ukraine." Okay. I don't know if the Russian military and the Ukrainian military, or what the Ukrainian are fighting for, or if they're fighting for money. But if we don't get any money for participating in the war, he said, there's nothing we get out of it, but it's an order. So I fought. Yeah, they're just being used here, like, for free. I mean, it's wow. They were indoctrinated to avoid surrender at all costs, even by suicide if necessary. North Korean secret police conducted ideological sessions in Russia, emphasizing that surrender was treason. Both men suffered, remember, these were the two North Korean soldiers. Both men suffered severe injuries. Paik lay wounded for 5 days before capture and later had several toes amputated due to gangrene. So, yeah, that's what the North Koreans are doing when they're sending their soldiers into Russia to fight the Ukrainians. Okay, Chris Owicki posted this, and I thought this was interesting. Russian war bloggers are not happy about the prospect of a ceasefire in Ukraine that leaves objectives of the special military operation unfulfilled. One asked, "Does the death of my boys mean nothing?" And it would go on a little bit. Now, remember, Russian war bloggers are far more truthful than the Russian Ministry of Defense. Like, they're pro-nationalist and they want to see Russia win, but they're not trying, generally speaking, they're not trying to color the situation. Now, maybe somebody is here, and I'll show you that in a moment. The prominent Russian war correspondent and propagandist Alexander Sladikov has aroused controversy by arguing that Russia is not fighting for territory, but for Russia's status in the new global world order that is currently being formed. And so it's maybe he's got the memo from the Russian Ministry of Defense to say something a little bit different. Quote, "The SMO is part of Moscow's global plan to return this to the status ranks. We are breaking in by force, pushing the EU, taking what is rightfully ours, a fair position in the international economy and politics." Other Russian war bloggers surmise, probably correctly, that Sladikov is reflecting a new official propaganda line that it doesn't matter if Russia takes all the territory it claims in Ukraine, as long as Trump gives it the status in a new global order that it craves. Huh. Well, that's interesting, because that's very different than what these Z bloggers would normally talk about. This is anathema for ultra-nationalist war bloggers. Okay, so I just thought that was interesting so that you could see what's going on back there behind the scenes. Okay, in other news, Norwegian NASAMS air defense manufacturer plans to establish a joint venture in Ukraine for missile production. Depending on how the war ends, if it ends and the Ukrainian economy is left in a stable place and the country can be rebuilt properly, Ukraine's future is really bright. Between all the technological improvements that they gain, like, think about what happened during COVID. I don't know about you, but for me, I stayed home and I was teaching online. And we learned a lot about online teaching at my university in real short order. In a matter of months, we gained years worth of experience in online education. And I think this is going to happen. What's happened with Ukraine is going to be somewhat analogous to that, because they have had to make certain gains, and on the other side, they're going to be hyper productive, an arms dealer to the world, and they're going to be cross pollinating concepts that they've gotten by the diaspora, the people that have traveled around the world and then come back. They're going to have all kinds of ideas that they didn't have before. So it'll be pretty interesting to watch how Ukraine blossoms on the other side. I mean, that's going to be coupled with a national PTSD, but it's going to be interesting to see how they grow after this. Okay, here's the Russian embassy, UK. Russia poses no threat to the UK, neither its waters, airspace, nor streets, and it's certainly not Britain's long-suffering NHS, National Health Service. We have no need to do so. It's the UK government that needs these fabrications to avoid dealing with the country's real social and economic problems. Okay, so Russia poses no threat to the UK. Well, that's interesting, because this was also out today. So this was the Ministry of Defense that posted this. Russian embassy that posted this, and this is just what came out today. Russia offering British citizens cash to commit acts of arson and sabotage in the UK to sow unrest between Muslims and Christians. And if you go into the actual article, yeah, they're paying cryptocurrency so that again, what they're trying to do is create discord between various groups within the UK. And how do we know that it's the Russians? Evidence linking the groups to Russia include an administrative account of one of the channels sharing a screenshot from X that revealed the X account had questioned in its language set to Russian. It was set to GMT +3, a time zone in Russia and Belarus. Yeah, and so, but of course, they pose no threat, even if it's hybrid warfare. But then, Selydov doesn't talk about it regularly, does he? Right? What does Selydov say on his show? How about that Russia should strike Brussels and London and Paris? Or in another one, we see Selydov says that Russia will conquer Britain and Germany and France, but they pose no threat, right? Okay. Anyway, a couple other things. These are some drones, some ground drones, and we're going to see a Lancet get knocked down. Gulliver ground robotic system in service with the Ukrainian army. It's designed to deliver ammunition, gear, and equipment, and to evacuate wounded. Gulliver can transport over 300 kilograms of cargo with enough towing power to pull a small military off-road vehicle out of the mud. It's ugly, but if you can do that robotically, that's pretty impressive stuff, right? And here's a Russian Lancet drone that will no longer be in the sky over Ukraine in just about 8 seconds. Well, less than that. How about that? And now we have horses and donkeys on the battlefield, right? And so here's some new tech. I just thought this would be interesting. I don't know that that's actually, I mean, that could be AI for all I know, but I just thought it was funny. And then we have this Darth Putin saying Russia became the world's largest country by peaceful means. Sure it did. Yeah. Now, I want to end with this because this is important. Every Ukrainian soldier is someone's son, daughter, loved one, or friend. They fight for what they hold dear, but most importantly, they fight for the future of freedom and democracy. But I want to go back to this first line here. This is someone's son or daughter, loved one, or friend. It may be a spouse, maybe a parent, and they're fighting for their freedom and for their loved ones. And that's what I was trying to communicate here in, where is this story? In the thoughts about death and tragedy that I posted as soon as I got back from New Jersey. Like that was the thing that was kind of brewing in my mind, and I don't want you to go past that. So this is the next video that I would want you to see, just because you need to realize just how enormous this is. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.